Hey there, this is Jake from the Chasing Quality podcast. Thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to continue going down the rabbit hole of lenses by talking about the Kamlan 28mm f1.4 EFM mount lens. This is a fantastic little lens that I picked up for a pretty good price. It's not heavily reviewed yet, but Dustin Abbott, who is a photography hero of mine, did a really great in-depth blog post as well as a video on the Kamlan 28mm. So check out that video for really in-depth technical review, a technical review of the lens where he's comparing images and looking up close and pixel peeping and all that stuff. He's a super smart guy. I want to talk about it a little bit though from the practical side of things for those of us who aren't really photographers. First, let me mention a couple of the specs. This is a heavy little lens. It weighs in at 348 grams. It's which is about 3/4 of a pound, I guess 12 ounces. This is actually the hood on it. The cap, the lens cap is right in there a little bit. It's a little bit longer than the Canon 11 to 22mm. A lot heavier. This is definitely, for its size, it feels very heavy. It is f1.4, which means you get a very nice bokeh. It's got 11 aperture blades. It's got it's manual focus. That's probably the most important thing for anybody who's considering buying this lens to know, is that it is manual focus, and it's also manual aperture. It goes from f1.4 to f16. And it's got a nice smooth action on it as far as the focusing goes. For practical purposes, because I use this on a crop sensor, and it is for a crop sensor camera, it's the EFM mount, it is going to be roughly a 44.8 millimeter equivalent on 35mm. So I personally think that that's actually a very excellent focal length for so many things, for point and shoot, for taking simple indoor portraits, for webcasting specifically, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. It's just a really great all-around focal length. It's not too wide, it's not too narrow. It's just really ideal in the middle there. So it's a really great focal length. Who is Kamlan, or what is the Kamlan company? I don't know much about the company itself, but it is Chinese made. It's a Chinese company. And I ordered this straight from the website, kamlan.com, I guess, is what it was. It was $199. I believe that included shipping. I will say that it took a little while. I thought that they maybe had an American, a US-based distribution location, and they suggested they do out in Las Vegas on their website. But they also say that they could be shipping it from anywhere they've got things in stock. So this actually came direct from China, so it took maybe a week or two to get to me, which wasn't a huge deal, but it was a little bit annoying. It's not their fault. I mean, that probably keeps the prices down. So the shipment, but once it got here, I mean, it was packaged well. It was in good shape. No concerns there. It just took a little while. What I like about, let's talk about the build quality. What I like about the build quality is that it is very solid. It feels just, I don't know, these are machined parts that just feel so nice. And the hood is metal too. You can hear it. The hood's metal, so that's very nice. One thing though about the hood, before I move on, I should mention, I got the lens cap jammed down in there. One thing about the hood is the hood does have threads, 52mm, it's a 52mm filter size. It's got threads in there, but it's really hard to get down in there to put, say like an ND filter on there. It can be done, it's just kind of awkward with the way the fingers go down there. So just keep that in mind, that you may have to kind of work at it a little bit. What else about the build quality? Again, it's manual focus. It does have little gears here, I guess, or grips that would make it easy to put a focus ring for some sort of focus motor if you're using like a gimbal or whatever. Build is, again, very, very nice. One pet peeve of mine, and I believe that this has been mentioned by a couple other people about the build, is that, and I'd have to zoom in for you to see this, and I'm too far from my camera right now to be able to really show you this. But for the focus range, when you get to the infinity marker, it doesn't stop at infinity. It stops about 1 millimeter beyond infinity. And when it stops 1 millimeter beyond infinity, pretty much everything is ever so slightly out of focus. So if you can get it to infinity, about 1 millimeter away from that, where it actually stops, it puts a lot of things in focus, and it's really great, nice and sharp. But if you're quickly trying to find infinity, be prepared to work your way back. Again, it's about 1 millimeter or so to nail the focus. So that's a bit of a pet peeve with the build quality, and I don't know if there's a way to manually for me to actually adjust that. There might be some way for me to take this apart and try to calibrate that, but that's a little bit risky. So for practical purposes, I use a Canon M50, and I do highly recommend this lens for the Canon M50 if you meet these purposes that I'll talk about. One thing to know of any manual lens that does not have the electronics, the electrical connection to the body, you're going to have to go into your Canon M50, in my case, the settings menu, and there's a setting, and there are how-tos out there on how to do this, but you can go to one of the settings pages, and you're going to allow the camera to basically shutter release without a lens. It's something to that effect. And that will allow you to put manual lenses on your camera. Very important. So I have not had a single lens not work on my Canon, and I've got a couple of these manual lenses. So just check your settings before you suggest that there's something faulty about the lens. I mean, there are no electronics. It's basically just glass and metal. So there's nothing wrong with the lens. The lens is going to work. It's whether or not your camera will work. Okay, so it fits nice and tight on the camera body. It is a little bit, the diameter's slightly smaller than I think the standard EFM lens, and so the cap that goes on the back here fits perfectly. But what I've noticed is that the standard EOS M caps are a little bit oversized, and you actually kind of see it on the camera body that it's slightly small, but it is very stout. One thing that is really great about this lens, being an f1.4, is that you're going to get phenomenal bokeh. If you're using it in the right conditions, you're going to get amazing bokeh. It does a really great job. When we get to the image samples, I'll throw up a video sample too, showing how zoom in and zoom out for the bokeh effect of the lights and whatnot. But it's really, really great bokeh. So that's definitely a plus. As far as sharpness, I'm not a pixel peeper. I'm not really much of a again, I'm not really a photographer, so I don't look too carefully about the sharpness. I would again recommend Dustin Abbott's video and blog where he discusses in depth the clarity. But I have noticed that I really think that this does a really great job. If you nail the focus, you can get some really incredible images with this that I think are very clear, very lovely looking. It is maybe slightly warmer than the Canon lenses, but so long as you're shooting in RAW, it's really easy to adjust that ever so slightly to adjust the white balance. I've just noticed that perhaps when I'm using the Canon, say like the Nifty 50 or the 40 millimeter, those tend to be a little bit, the colors are ever so slightly different than the Kamlan, which is maybe a little bit warmer. But to me, that's not a big deal. I can adjust that in post-processing. It's no big deal. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at a few sample images and a couple short videos that I've put together. Okay, so let's look at a few pictures that I took with the Kamlan 28mm. This first one is it's just of our foyer looking into the foyer from our living room. I was focused on the light switch, and so you can see how what the fall off looks like in focus and the bokeh in the background. There are no little bokeh balls. There's no light back there, but you can see that blurring and that nice depth of field. This next one is just of a little flower arrangement that we have sitting in the foyer. Zoomed in on the one flower up front, and then everything else falls off into quite a blur behind it. This next one is this was taken with a slower, more narrow aperture. I can't remember what it was. I don't get those recorded in the images because it's a manual lens, but it was probably f4, just of the living room. So it's pretty sharp. You'll notice though, at 28 millimeters on a cropped sensor, it's really not wide enough to do real estate photos. You're going to need something much wider, probably around 12 millimeters. This next image is of my KAM Spectrum microphone. I love it. I love this little microphone. And I'm focused, of course, on the microphone itself, and then my monitors in the background are incredibly blurred out, even though they weren't too far away. This next photo is of a little bee, a little native bee, hanging out on one of our flowers. Again, the bee is in focus, and everything else just falls off nicely. This next one is of one of our dogs. He's just kind of hanging out, saying hello. But his face is nice and in focus, and of course the grass is blurred out very nicely. I do like shooting this pretty much wide open all the time. When I start cranking it down to say like f8 or something like that, it's helpful at times. But generally, I really love I use it for the fast aperture mostly. This next image is of it's of the dash in my car. You can see that that center point is nice and in focus, and you can see just how quickly the focus falls off to the left and right when you've got it wide open at 1.4. Okay, so this next one, this was an 8-second exposure taken at it was about 4:30 a.m. a very early morning. I had trouble sleeping, and I got up and I was playing around with the lens a little bit. So it's pretty fast. I guess I had it on a tripod, but it takes pretty good astrophotography. It's not the angle's a little bit awkward for astrophotography. I think generally you want something that's much wider, or something that's very narrow and more telephoto in length. But it does a good job. I mean, it's really good in low light. Okay, so now let's take a quick look at what it looks like with the zooming in, or the focusing, going in and out of focus on some lights. Yeah, you'll see it. You see me focusing there onto the lights and then focusing back out. It shows just how nice the bokeh balls are. Of course, at the outer edges, you start getting some distortion. It's less round and more like a football. So this is what it really looks like when I'm recording from my desktop at my computer, doing, say, like a webcast, like a Zoom meeting, or actually when I'm recording my podcast with RJ, and we're doing it over Zoom. This is the camera lens that I'm using. I really do love this focal length. I think that it puts enough of my face into the screen without putting too much other stuff in the background. You can see that my bookshelf behind me is nicely blurred out. You can tell it's a bookshelf, but you can't really see what's on it. It's such a fast lens. I really don't need a lot of light. I have a little bit of natural light right now from the window, although it's storming outside, so there's not much coming in. And I've got a little desk lamp that's lighting up my face decently well. I could spend a lot of time trying to have a little bit more professional lighting around me, and that would help. But because it's such a fast lens, again, I don't really know how much I need it. But yeah, so this is what it looks like when I'm sitting at my desk, and I really enjoyed it. My keyboard's right here, right, and yeah, looks pretty good. So I hope that I didn't put up too many images. I know that sometimes the images can get a little bit boring. It's like watching somebody's slideshow from their vacation. I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the pictures that I've been able to take. But as far as practical purposes, what I think is really, what I really want to stress is that if I weren't doing a review on this lens right now, this lens would be what would be on my camera. I really do love this lens for video. I especially love it for my webcasting. I like the manual focus for that specifically. By webcasting, I'm talking about anything where I'm doing a video sitting at my desk, either a video meeting, like a Zoom meeting at work, or doing a video for YouTube or whatever. I like the manual focus because I set the focus to where I know I'm normally sitting, and then everything else just kind of melts away in the background because of the aperture, the fast aperture. And I don't have to worry about when I stand up and walk away that all of a sudden everything in the backdrop is going to be put in focus when I maybe really don't want it in focus. You know, the books on my shelves or the junk on my shelves or whatever. So I find this to be a fast aperture lens is excellent for doing you know, online meetings and whatnot. Additionally, I really think that the focal length, this 28 millimeter, again, which ends up being about 44 or so equivalent on a full frame lens, I think that's really ideal for where I sit. My lens is sitting maybe about 2 feet from me normally. It's sitting between my two monitors, and it puts my head, it's about like this or so. And that way, whomever I'm talking with, they're not getting distracted by what's going on in the background. My face is front and center. And again, it kind of keeps everything else out of the background. So you're gonna have to play around with the focal length a little bit, depending on what your setup is at your desktop. But I would say anywhere from 22 to 28 millimeters, maybe 32 millimeters. So maybe 22 to 32 millimeters, the widest end, on a crop sensor is really ideal. And that's really what I love this the most for. I also like the fact that it's so fast that if I'm indoors taking photos, like say a family event, it's wide enough that I can get the shot in, and it's fast enough that I don't have to worry too much about the low light performance. So it's really most excellent about that. As far as a couple similar lenses that I've tried that maybe are just as good or are good contenders would be the Canon 40mm EF Pancake on a speed booster, either the Metabone speed booster or the Viltrox focal reducer, aka speed booster, which reduces it down to 28 millimeters. That lens is an f2.8, and when you use the speed booster, it becomes an f2.0. So it's not as fast as this lens, but it's pretty cheap. You can get that Pancake lens for like $80 used on eBay. So if you already have a speed booster, that's a really, really good option. It's especially the 40 millimeter has a very quiet STM motor in it. It's really sharp, and again, it's inexpensive, very light to carry. So that's definitely a great option. There is also the Sigma 30 millimeter f 1.4, which I have not tried out, and that's for the small mirrorless cameras, the APS-C sensors. I haven't tried that out yet. I don't know if I will, but it gets pretty good reviews. And there's also the Canon 32mm f1.4 for the EOS M, or the EFM mount. I do have that one on order, and I am very eager to try that out against this. The comparison will determine which one I keep, because I probably won't keep both. I really do love this Kamlan lens. I definitely do. But for flexibility, I maybe want the autofocus, so long as it's easy to turn off and on. This is a $200 lens. The 32mm is about a $500 lens. So if money is a big factor in your decision, this one is definitely, this will check most of the boxes if you're willing to play around with the manual focus. So those are a couple other lenses. You can also, the lens I'm using right now is actually the Canon Nifty 50, the 50mm f1.8 Mark II on a speed booster. You can use that one as well, but that one, even with the speed booster, it only drops it down to about a 35mm, which is pretty close. I really think that 32mm is the cutoff if you're going to use it for like webcasting up close. Right now I've got the camera, it is on a speed booster, and I've got the camera, I don't know, a good 6 feet, maybe 8 feet away from me in order to fit this much in. So imagine having that sitting on your desktop as you're sitting there. So that definitely makes a big difference. There are a couple like the Mike or Mike, I think, 25mm, and a couple other third-party lenses that are inexpensive and manual focus. But I really do believe that the Kamlan, from what I've seen as far as reviews and my own experience, I think this one knocks it out of the park as far as price and quality. Again, if you're willing to do the manual focus. So then the question is, of course, with these lenses is, am I going to keep it? Am I going to keep it? I would really like to keep this lens. if I get the when I get the 32mm, if I like it, which I probably will, it's very highly thought of. The reviews are outstanding for the lens. I've seen people say that it is the lens to get for the EOS M series cameras. So I really don't think I'm going to be disappointed by the quality. It is a very expensive lens, though. So there's a chance I may try to keep both because I really do like this. This is, again, perfect for. It sits at my desk. I love using it for video because I don't like the autofocus going in and out, especially if I know exactly where I'm sitting and I know where the camera is. I will nail the focus for that. So right now I know that the camera is. I've got it on manual focus right now. It's an autofocus lens, but I've got a manual focus, and right here is the plane that's focused on. So I know where I need to put my face for it to be in focus. I know I need to put the lens right about here for it to be perfectly in focus. So for filming on a tripod as a solo operation, I really like having it in manual mode. Anyway, yeah, it wouldn't work as well if I'm using a gimbal and I'm trying to track me or myself or whatever. But yeah, so I think I'm going to try to keep it because I really do like it, and I highly recommend this lens, especially if you're on a budget. This is you could call it a budget lens. I would say it's at the more expensive end of the budget lens range, but it's very good quality. I'm actually pretty eager to try out the Kamlan 50mm f1.1, I think, Mark II. I've heard a lot of good things about that. I'm eager to try that out on my camera. But until then, I'll probably keep using the nifty 50 on either an adapter or a speed booster to get that 50mm range. So anyway, that's what I have to say about the Kamlan f1.4 EOS M lens. If you haven't checked out our podcast, we're on pretty much every major platform. It's a Chasing Quality podcast on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, etc., etc. Check us out. We'd love to have you along for the journey. And if you're wondering whether or not you should subscribe or like or do whatever, I don't really care. But do leave some comments. I do like it if you give me some feedback or give me some thoughts or ask questions. I like the dialogue. I'll respond. I like being social like that. So until next time, you keep chasing that quality because you know I will. Bye-bye.